Anymore, we don't. We fixed it. Alp Mehmet is here, the chair of Migration Watch. Alp, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Welcome to the brand new world of the Mike Graham Show. What do you think? It's good, isn't it?
It's very plush.
It's very plush. Well, you're the first person that said it's plush, but I mean, thank you for that. We'll take that. Basically, we got lots to talk about this morning. I mean, the whole Ratcliffe thing, actually, why don't you kick off with that? I mean, Gary Lineker, they're having a go at everyone who's been critical of migration levels. And isn't it interesting how the sort of the virtue signalling lefties won't hear anything at all said about how immigration or refugees or asylum seekers or illegal migrants are in any way bad for the country. And we're all supposed to accept it. And anyone who says it's bad for the country or anyone who says it's costing us dear is painted as some kind of, maniac.
Well, thinking back to what Keir Starmer said about the risks of our ending up an island of strangers, he was also told, you've got to apologise,
yes.
You've got to withdraw.
Right.
He never actually did. What he said was that he regretted
yes.
that what he'd said had echoes of
yes.
something that Enoch Powell
right.
had said. The reasons for Keir Starmer saying what he did are exactly the reasons that Jim Ratcliffe was pointing
right.
to.
Yes.
And there's no doubt that immigration has been way, way out of control. The scale, the pace has been absolutely extraordinary.
Right.
It's changing our society. There's no doubt about that. And I think we're going to come on to that and demographic change.
Yes. Well, because this book that we were highlighting last week, actually, and I'm going to show it again for those of you who didn't see it last week, put together by the New Culture Forum, Immigration to Betrayal of Britain. It's got a whole series of chapters written by very many different people, different philosophies, different thoughts. You've got the first chapter, Alp, about the demographic change that's happened. So tell us a bit about what that says.
Well, if you look back to 1951, the 1950s, we had foreign nationals here to the tune of around 4%.
Right.
By the time we got to 1991, that census showed that this had actually risen marginally.
Yeah.
By 2021, it had quintupled from what it was in 1991.
Right.
We now have just those who are foreign born around, 17, 18% probably.
So nearly
but more importantly, Mike, if I can just finish it, more importantly, the white British, Scots, Welsh, English, what the ONS refers to as the white British, they are now around 75%. And that's happened in the space of 30 years.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because although that's quite an alarming rise, and you can see the changes, with your own eyes on the streets of certainly the cities of this country, you still would say, without fear or favour, that it's still very much a white British majority country. But it's not as simple as that, is it?
No, well, it's not as simple as that because it depends where you're looking.
Yes.
Look around you in London. There are boroughs in London, Newham, for example, where it's something like 70% non-white British.
Yes.
So
London itself, as a city, is minority white British, isn't it now? 38%.
In part, it's
I think overall it is, isn't it?
Just around between 40 and 50%.
Yeah.
So, but we're getting there. We're getting there, and it will happen pretty quickly. The problem is that we don't really know exactly how many people there are here who are here illegally. And that is something that I think the government could do more to establish. Our estimates at Migration Watch have always been that it's been around 1 million overall.
Yeah.
It's probably, I think, between 1.5 and 2 million now. So you've got to add all these to those that we officially know about.
This is one of the things that Jim Ratcliffe said, and people picked him up on and said, "Oh, he's got the numbers wrong. You know, we haven't got 70 million people here." Well, I always maintain I don't think people know, and I include the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, and the census. I don't think they really know how many people are in the country, because I'm certainly fairly sure, and I know the south coast of this country very well because I spent quite a lot of time down there. There are huge swathes of the south coast from, say, Dover all the way around to Hastings, where you can land a boat and nobody will see you. And we've got certainly information that has come from eyewitnesses who say, "Oh yeah, I was down in Dungeness the other day, and suddenly this boat just kind of pitched up, and all these guys jumped out of it and ran into the town." You know, and I'm sure there's a lot more of that going on than we know about.
Well, we get plenty of people saying to us, getting in touch, saying this, that, the other happened last night. I came across this. So yeah, certainly that's going on, but we've also got to bear in mind that so many of these people who are coming here are coming in legally and staying on without permission. Right. And that's
coming
what adds to the illegal population.
Work visas, student visas, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. People who come for a short holiday and disappear into the undergrowth.
And is that partly because our kind of system is so hopeless? Because I mean, I've also been told by people that the border force, for example, who even the ones that sit at airports and the ones that sit at ports, they count people in, but they don't count them out.
Well, I'm not sure that they count them all in, actually.
What's the point of them then?
Well, I used to be an immigration officer, as you know, Mike, and we certainly counted them in and counted them out.
Right.
Counting them out, that stopped about 30 years ago.
Right.
It was John Major, actually, who stopped it all.
But isn't that quite an important part of monitoring who's here?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you go anywhere else in the world, particularly to countries where, frankly, they're not nearly as advanced as we are,
right,
they know exactly who's coming in,
right,
they know where they are, and they know when they've left.
When you've left,
and you will be picked up on very quickly if you're still there when you're not supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I've been to many countries where, you know, your passport is stamped as you leave in the same way that it is when you go in.
Yeah.
You know? America, certainly, they know exactly where you are.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And most countries in Europe that I've been to, certainly since the end of our membership of the EU, you know, they're quite hot on looking at your passport as you leave. They don't just wave you through.
No, and that's something that we could be doing. We used to, in the old days, people would come in, they would give an address, they would be given permission to come in for a month, say.
Right.
At the end of that month, that card that they'd completed and had been stamped and sent it in and archived, recorded, that would pop up on the date when they're supposed to leave, or shortly after. And if they haven't gone, then the police will be sent round.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, there are now so many millions that it becomes a bit unrealistic to expect that to happen.
Yes.
But nevertheless, there is the technology for us to monitor what is going on in the way that we simply don't. And my own feeling is that we need to look again at the whole structure of immigration control.
Totally, because it seems as though it's out of control in terms of not just those coming in, but the monitoring of them as well. I mean, we've been told, I think, by people inside the Home Office before, that there simply aren't enough employees in the Home Office to track all of the people in the country. And of course, we know that there's thousands of people working in the Home Office. I don't know what they're all doing. But for example, that guy who committed those terrible murders in Nottingham, a couple of years ago, Valdo Callicane, he turned out to be someone who had come in on a student visa and who had overstayed his welcome and who had become, rightly, I don't know whether he'd become a schizophrenic, I don't know if that's the right term, but, you know, he was a danger to society and he shouldn't have been here.
No.
But nobody was tracking the fact that he was a danger to society or that he was here when he shouldn't have been.
Yeah, well, one of the problems that we have, there seems to be an unwillingness for government departments, for different agencies actually to talk to each other. So we could actually, one way of doing it would be to have a department that doesn't wait for them to come to us, but we go to them and say, hey, what's going on here? And that, I'm afraid that's not happening.
It should work, sort of like the parole system should work, which also doesn't work, by the way, because nothing really works in this country at the moment. But, there should be, surely, some form of method by which, if you've come here to do a business degree or something at, Leicester de Montfort University, that after that 3 years is up, you should have to go somewhere to either get your visa extended or to explain why you need to stay, or something. There ought to be some, practical means of tracking people who have finished their degree and, are you leaving the country? Are you not leaving it? What are you doing?
No, you're absolutely right, Mike. And dare I say, it's something that the Home Office has sort of divested itself of.
Yeah.
And it's passed it all on to the universities. I think that the universities could be expected to do a lot more to ensure that those that they've been teaching leave. And that's what it's all about. A lot of those who stay on are actually much more needed in their own countries, in undeveloped countries. That it costs them a fortune, these countries, to get the students to the stage whether they can come here and further their education.
Right.
All right, work a few months and get some experience as well. But what we do at the moment, we say, okay, you've qualified, you can stay on. Whatever it is that you've qualified in, you can stay on for another 2 years.
Right.
And then it's strung out even more. And that's just an absurdity, really. And so much of our immigration control, both with legal and illegal immigration, I'm afraid, is totally out of hand. It's uncontrolled, and it's getting to the stage where it's uncontrollable, frankly. Right. And I fear that the governments that we have had and the government we've got at the moment, and I have to say, Shabana Mahmood is proving rather more capable. But
but you say that, but then she seems to be falling victim to the same pitfalls as everybody else. Like, for example, the story we've seen in the Sun this morning, £500,000 worth of compensation being paid out to migrants who are suing the government because they've got, fancy lawyers and human rights brigade people helping them out, charities. They're getting $6,500 each because they had their phones taken off them. I mean, that shouldn't be possible, should it?
No, but I agree that more could be done. What I'm saying is that Shabana Mahmood, I think, is aware of these, and she's capable of changing the system to one that actually works. And I'm afraid there's nothing like that in train at the moment. One thing that has to happen is the ECHR has got to go.
Right.
And that's relatively easy.
Sure.
We give 6 months' notice and we're out. However, it's the way that it's embedded in our legal system, in our legislation, really. And that's what needs to be unpicked.
Well, because one of the things that's happened, for example, was, you're probably aware of this, but last week, there was a court case filed on Wednesday by 16 migrants who were challenging the one-in, one-out scheme, who were saying basically that they can't be sent back to France or any other country in Europe because the conditions in those countries are worse than the conditions here. Now, that shouldn't be possible. We were told by the government and Shabana Mahmood this was, record-changing legislation that they were doing. The first time we've done a proper deal with France, the first time we've got France to agree to take these people back, and suddenly, they get challenged in a court, and it's all over.
Well, I'm afraid that Monsieur Macron, the president of France, ran rings around our prime minister.
Yeah,
and I fear that was all about currying favour with the EU and France.
Right.
It was obvious, and everyone knew that it was never going to work. You mentioned it being challenged here. Actually, it's being challenged in France as well, by the sort of people that we really need to remove and do it quickly. It's no good getting 10 back here and 15 back in the other direction. There's about 300 now so far.
We've brought more in than we've sent back.
Yeah, much. And it's going to be many more as well.
Well, it's not difficult, this. It's a pure mathematical equation. But if you're going to call it one in, one out, make it one in, one out, not one in and no out.
Yeah,
It's kind of what it is.
It's like smashing the gangs. These wonderful slogans. They go down well on the doorstep, and they make wonderful headlines, but totally meaningless.
But not if they don't make it happen, which is now why they're being ridiculed, right?
Totally meaningless, and it was never going to happen. The government had an opportunity to pass some really appropriate legislation, shall we say?
Yes.
This time last year, I remember giving evidence to the committee of ministers and other politicians that was looking at the bill going through. And all they were concerned about, what my organisation meant by, they didn't actually say it, but white British, which is the term used by...
Well, it's the term used by the census,
the ONS, and it's in the census. It actually asks you. And yet, that was what the government minister at the time was trying to allude to, that we were somehow, looking at colour. It's nothing to do with bloody colour. Right. Sorry.
No, it's fine. This is the YouTube channel, man. You can swear if you want. You can get worse than that if you want to. We try not to, but but no, it's extraordinary, isn't it? That again, I said this to Henry Bolton. You and I have been talking about this for years, and it hasn't got any better. In fact, if anything, it's got worse. It has got worse, and it's going to get even worse, actually. And that is what worries me. Yeah. If you're looking to the future, the changes, the demographic changes since 1950 that I write about in that book, I mean, that is picking up pace. Yeah. The 10 million or so out of the 10 million people who are here, non-UK born, about half of them came in the last 10 years. Yeah. I mean that. Well, Rafe, I think I remember when we were all at that the launch of the book. Rafe Heidelmann-Koe said in his little speech that in the last 20 to 25 years, more people have come to this country than had come in the previous 2,000 years, which is pretty worrying, really. Isn't it? It worries you and me, Mike, and the majority of people in this country, and that's something that the government forgets. Yes. The vast majority of people in this country are concerned about this, are concerned about the scale of migration, are concerned about the demographic change. Of course they're not. Racist. I mean, as I often say, I'm a first-generation migrant, and I'd be only too delighted if those coming here had the sort of opportunities that I had in order to integrate. Yeah. But when I arrived in the mid-50s, I was the only kid in my East End primary school that didn't speak English. Right. The only foreigner, as it were. Right. If you go back to the same school now, I'm afraid that every one of the children... I've got a photo taken in 1957-8, and went back 50 years later and had a photograph with the kids in that same school, in that same year. Right. And there I was in the original photo that was taken in 1957. There I was the only little, and you couldn't actually tell, in truth, that I was the foreigner. I was in the photo with the kids, who were wonderful, and I often wonder what happened to them, but they're all in their 20s and late 20s and 30s now. I wonder what has happened to those kids, because they really were lovely, but they were certainly, they didn't appear integrated, their appearance. There were also those who, and it still happens now, the vast majority of them would not speak English at home. Right. It's just, English is very much a second language. Yeah. Right. Now, you can't have that sort of situation and expect people to integrate. Yeah. I mean, what do new arrivals integrate with? Right. Where you've got so many different languages, you've got areas where it's a single ethnicity almost, and that if you look at Bradford, if you look at Leicester, if you look at so many different parts of the country,
And that is not Britain.
No.
All right.
But we've now got, for example, stories, and you'll see that ticker running underneath the screen there. We've got a story today, and people have been very coy about describing the communities that are affected. But there are two particular communities. One's in Enfield, one's in the West Midlands, where there's a huge outbreak of measles currently going on because the vast majority of the children in those communities are not vaccinated against it, right? And that has to be a cultural scenario, doesn't it? And nobody's really talking about it.
There is so much that the swathes of immigration, if that's not the wrong word, and I'm not going to get criticised for that, but the swathes of immigration really have brought about cultural changes that, again, people might say, oh, isn't this wonderful? You know, we've got all these rich cultures. Well, if you've got individual communities, really, with their own cultures, with their own language, with their own shopping customs and ways, you know, that is not British.
No.
How can we possibly remain a united country? How the cohesion that we've enjoyed for centuries? I mean, what we're doing is importing really isolated communities within the overall community, within our society, who are not really concerned about being British necessarily.
Or preserving it either,
Or preserving it. And we're doing very little about that. Personally, I don't think that the government can sort of introduce a mechanism, a machine, and everyone goes through, a new arrival goes through it and it comes out at the other end as,
on the other hand,
as integrated. It just cannot happen that way. And I'm afraid that is what the government is looking at the moment. The government thinks that this is something that it can manage because of the huge numbers that are coming in. Well, it doesn't matter because we can manage it. We can't.
They can't manage
and we
it.
won't.
No, and they're not managing it because people are just seeing the change happening at pace. Communities changing before their very eyes, and as you say, people not integrating, and that is what worries most people. Alp, fantastic to see you and to talk to you. We must do this on a regular basis.
Well, good luck, Mike. You know, I've been wanting to come up to chat to you since the change took place.
Yes, absolutely.
Good luck.
Well, listen, we're doing very well.
Job.
We're very happy. We've got a great audience. They all moved with me, and so. With God's help, as they say, in some places, we shall continue with all of it. But brilliant to see you. Alp Mehmet, thank you very much indeed. And the book, once again, Immigration, The Betrayal of Britain. A couple of people asking if they can get it on Amazon or they can't find it on Amazon because it's sold out. If you go on the New Culture Forum's website, you'll see there where you can get it from. And you can order it, I think, directly from them.